Who am I again?
So you're Wyatt Earp.
All right.
Yeah. Hell's coming with you, man.
Hell's coming with me.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Idly ho, neighbors.
Yeah. And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Hi, everyone.
And we are a week removed from that Jesse Malton interview, and it seems like everybody loved that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad because I think the three of us thought before we published it, this is one of the best ones we've done. I even tweeted that when I sent it out.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see the feedback was similar. And she was great, you know, for what she later said on Twitter was the first time she's been interviewed without her dad.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, but she was great. So I don't know. I hope she's not as worried the next time she does something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm glad everybody enjoyed that. And we really much enjoyed being in the room doing that one.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go back to regularly scheduled programming today.
Yeah.
We're going to define the decade that was the aughts.
Let's put a smile on that face.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit? You shall not pass!
Don't move till you're numb.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I am Iron Man.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up!
The zeros.
The OOs.
The 2000s. There's many ways that I always say ought, and I'll tell you why. It's because of the Shawshank Redemption. It's the Brooks scene in the library where he's like, "I've been here since aught 5."
Oh yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, let's do aughts.
Yeah.
I think there's even a Simpsons episode where Grandpa says something about ought. Whatever.
Oh yeah. We're gonna do either the aughts, zeros, or 2000s, or whatever you want to call those. This is the decade for me where I can't really pick out I don't know what happened in this decade that made me think that there's not really anything that defines it.
Mm-hmm.
There's not any style that I can really point out. Now, maybe you guys can help me.
I actually had the same feeling for about a day and a half thinking about this podcast. And then today, I must have slept on the right side of the bed or something. I don't know. But I woke up with a few ideas of things that might define the decade. But to answer what you're talking about, which I think is true, is I think we're going to have to talk about 9/11 anyway at some point. But I think what happened is after 9/11, studios and even some filmmakers weren't really sure which direction to go. And so we got a lot of, shotgun approach.
Mm-hmm.
And so the decade doesn't necessarily have a defining style or tone of film because, I think we just said, well, let's try a little bit of everything and see where America's at.
Yeah.
There's not, you look at, you think about 60s, there's images that pop in your head. You think about the 70s, there's images that pop in your head. 80s, 90s.
Mm-hmm. See, it's boobs for all four of those decades for me.
Yeah, boobs. Yeah,
just kidding.
absolutely. For the zeros, which are actually two boobs.
Yeah.
I've been watching way too much Friends. That was a little too much Joey right there.
But for that one, I can tell when a movie's made from that decade because there's some certain things that sort of stand out whenever a movie from the 2000s comes out, or that I see on TV or whatever. But not too much. It's not like anything. There's some things now, like if you look at TV. That it's kind of like an old 2000s thing because they'll show the old stuff from I guess it's pre-2006, 2007, somewhere before HD was a thing. So you start seeing those the box and the two black bars on the left and right of your screen. It's like, okay, I know this is the 2000s, and now that dates it in the first half of the decade.
Yeah, because in the 90s discussion, I mentioned that there's a big difference between the beginning of the decade and the end of the decade as far as the look of the film.
Mm-hmm.
This is even more pronounced.
Yeah.
Because, you take a movie from 2001 and put that up against something like The Social Network or something like that at the end of the decade, and it's a huge leap. And I guess it's probably digital film, things like that, or digital instead of film.
It's not only the technology they use to make the stuff, but it's the technology used in the films, and it falls right along the same fault lines, right? Because until I think the first iPhone was 2007, and prior to that, it was basically some kind of flip phone or what have you.
Like a Neo phone?
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so that happened about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through that decade, or like the internet stuff is always what gets me, because you can tell by the types of websites that are being shown when somebody like the girl in Twilight in that first movie goes looking up the ancient whatever. It looks pretty silly compared to what we would see today or what we would even see 7 years ago. I just think it's interesting that technology-wise, both on the creative side, how you made it, what film stock you used, or digital or HD is a thing, or what Blu-ray comes along, or what have you, but also on screen, what the characters are using and doing. You can tell first half, second half pretty easy.
So, I mean, I think what, Chris, you were getting to is there's two things. One is that we're not far enough maybe away from that decade to necessarily say this is definitely associated with that. Obviously, 9/11 was like the bellwether event.
I don't know. I think we are.
You think we are?
Away. We're 7 years into the new decade. By 2007, don't you think you realized what the 90s were like? I mean, I feel
That's
like
a good
I
point.
feel like I did.
I still feel like I need more time. I think I was thinking about that on the way driving down here, that we're maybe so close to this it might be difficult compared to the previous decades we've defined.
Well, there's that, and then it's also difficult because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is where
wrong.
distribution really got crazy as far as content, right? Like there was just a massive of movies being shoved out.
They started building more and more 16 to 20 auditorium theaters. This was a sort of a race between all the big ones, AMC, Regal, and all them, to build all these huge 20 plus megaplexes. I think they've calmed that down.
Yeah, it looks like
because I think they realized that we build these big huge palaces for what? To have more of the same of everything else that everybody else has. What's the point in that? And so you had that incredible like explosion of those type of theaters, and then you started seeing like 4,000 and 5,000 screen movies happening and everything. I don't think there's much difference now. I mean, there's still a lot of theaters out there that are, they're still coming out with multi-screen huge event movies, but this was sort of the start of it where you really started seeing that everywhere. Because the 90s, you'd see multi-screen stuff, but not nearly to the point that it got. And with the addition of digital, which I consider more a this decade type of thing, with the addition of digital and everything, then they didn't even have to worry about prints.
Right.
You just send the one thing, and then you can put it to whatever projector you want to, and as long as your home office or whatever agrees with whatever you're doing, you can play it on so many screens.
If you actually spent a couple seconds thinking about how much money they probably saved on trucks.
Yeah, right.
Oh my
mind
God.
will blow.
No kidding.
I mean, every single theater had to get some kind of delivery, and
It would be just trucks of films.
Oh yeah.
oh yeah,
That was so. Oh, man, that's one of the worst things about Hollywood 27 back in the 35 millimeter days. Is that the truck would come, and of course we're the 27, so we get 1 million, and each one of these movies has at least 2 cans. So you get 10 movies in a weekend, you get 20 of these freaking cans that you got to bring up this elevator and everything else, and then like put them in. It's just nonstop walking up and down the stairs and going up elevators and all this sort of stuff.
because they would bring them in and set them right down by customer service, and then nobody else would give a shit. Customer service would go, "Hey, come get your shit." So we'd have to pause whatever we're doing, building a movie, anything that you consider art when you're a projection. That's threading a projector just perfectly. You got to leave that to just go be, hard labor for about 30 minutes. It sucked.
So
And not to
terrible.
mention they're all really heavy, and those handles make them really uncomfortable to carry.
They use these things that are from 1985.
Yeah.
They're just like they haven't improved. They didn't improve film can technology over the years. It wasn't made for your comfort. But yeah, they did the the digital thing, and they still deliver those. Although I think there's some theaters now that they don't even deliver, or they just download now. I think some of them they just, and I don't like it. They've almost taken projection completely out of the hands of people who work at the theater.
When did you go digital again?
Our Hollywood 27 was 2011, I believe. Went completely digital. We had some early ones that had been put in early before that, but the full digital was 2011 because that's that Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows bullshit. And so it was 2011. Although theaters before us had done it, but it was still sort of a 2010, 2009. And when I was in New York, even like the theaters that got digital there were a couple of projectors, and everything else was still 35 millimeter and everything. So I don't know. I think New York and Los Angeles got in on that just before the decade ended, but it's really a kind of a this decade thing, I believe. So you mentioned 9/11. That did affect a lot of things. It affected the way movies were made. They had shot movies in New York and had to digitally take out the World Trade Center.
Or felt they had to.
Yeah, they felt they had to, which was so silly because, it might be a bad reminder, but it's like, who cares at this point? You know, it's...
they did exist. They were there.
They did exist, and you can pop in a million movies before 2001 and see them.
Or like any episode of Friends.
Right.
Well, they took them out of Friends for a while.
Did they really?
Yeah, they're back now, but for like 5-6 years, they took them, every single one of those establishing shots that had the towers in it, they took out.
Really?
And,
yeah, I didn't realize that.
The Sopranos opening thing used to have that shot of the World Trade Center. They took that out post 9/11. They took that out.
And then the Spider-Man trailer.
The Spider-Man trailer was the most famous of that whole thing
because the web was right between the two.
Yeah,
right?
he was in between the two towers. That was the teaser for Spider-Man in 2001, and then afterwards they had to pull all those and everything. And then there was a lot of that going on, and then I don't think we got reflective about 9/11 in movies until 5 years later. That's when we started seeing a lot of stuff. We saw 2 9/11 themed movies coming out, United 93 and World Trade Center. Then we started seeing a lot of the situation in Iraq and Afghanistan is fucked up type of movies, and all the stuff that all the sort of the freedoms we're letting go and all that. So you had movies like Rendition, and you had The Kingdom, and there's a lot of these movies that came out. They're showing, we're in a bad situation right now and everything. And those movies didn't do well because nobody wanted to be reminded of how bad of a situation we're in.
Exactly.
That's why I think the rise of Judd Apatow happens in this decade.
That's one of the things I thought, because eventually we're going to get down to like who owned the decade. And one of the guys I thought was Apatow because he just kind of like everything really clicked for him this decade.
Yeah. After so many different, what you would call failures, I guess. I mean, Freaks and Geeks still is a cult thing. I don't think it's ever become huge. I mean, of course, 18 episodes not a way to get huge, but that was like the biggest story about Apatow for so long, is that he couldn't get anything to just take.
Right.
And he did Undeclared. I remember early,
but it was so funny.
I loved Undeclared.
Yeah.
And it just didn't take. And then finally he does the 40-Year-Old Virgin, and that's what finally made him a name among everybody.
That movie made a lot of names.
Yes, it did. And so after that, I mean, it was just everything seemed like everything had Apatow's name on it. If it was a comedy, you could almost tell immediately just by seeing if there's Jason Segel in it.
The cast.
Is Seth Rogen in it? Is James Franco in it?
Paul Rudd anywhere around?
Yeah, Paul Rudd somewhere in there. He really had his first. I guess he had done some. I don't know. Even as a movie producer, he had movies that didn't do, like The Cable Guy was. That's where he.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Eventually meets his future wife Leslie Mann. That didn't do anything. So he had that long term. But The Anchorman was his first, I think, real big hit of the 2000s as far as a producer is concerned.
Yeah.
And so I think he just launched from there. He
had his hands in everything. Yeah, because that's the whole Adam McKay, Will Ferrell camp.
Yeah.
Which is tangentially associated with them, and he's just got this umbrella of everything. His director credits. So it was 40-Year-Old Virgin. Then it was Knocked Up.
Yeah.
And then what came?
It was Funny People. That was his next.
That was his next.
Next directing.
Oh, okay.
Which Funny People, not a good movie.
But then he had Pineapple Express.
But as a producer, he had the year. Okay, so he had Knocked Up in 2007. Superbad came out later that summer.
Right, yeah.
The following year, he had Forgetting Sarah Marshall. He had Pineapple Express. One other movie too. I think it was 2008 was a big year for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like everything that was worth watching comedy-wise was being done through him and everything. It infected so many things that there were movies that came out with those actors that weren't even Judd Apatow movies.
Yeah.
You started thinking they were just by sort of an association, like Zack and Miri Do a Porno.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a Kevin Smith movie, has nothing to do with Judd Apatow, but it had Seth Rogen and Elizabeth Banks and Craig Robinson and all these people. And then there was Role Models, which had Paul Rudd in it, and it seemed, and and then you had I Love You Man, which is Jason Segel and Paul Rudd. Those seemed like Judd Apatow movies, and they weren't.
2008 was also Step Brothers. He was a producer
Step Brothers
on.
was the other one.
And then he did Walk Hard as a producer the year
Walk
before,
Hard.
which I just
2008.
saw last night. That's an underrated Paul Rudd performance as John Lennon, by the way.
No, yeah.
Maybe.
He's so over the top. It's
Everybody
so
is.
great.
Everybody playing I love that scene because everybody's like, what do you think about it, the Beatles, Paul McCartney?
The quiet one, George. I'm just trying to write songs on my guitar from the Beatles.
But that's sort of what when I think about the 2000s, I think about him the most often, and probably tipping my hand on the fact that I believe he owned that decade.
Mm-hmm. I got a couple more arguments to make before we draw those conclusions.
It's also the decade of when comic book movies started being taken seriously.
Yeah.
Although it weirdly went the other way. It went more towards the fun because Marvel decided to, horn in on what was going on here.
Well, at least until 2005 when Batman Begins, or 6.
No, I'm talking about after that.
Oh.
Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. I think those were the standards. And Spider-Man, even though Spider-Man is a fun movie, I don't consider it I don't consider it as lighthearted as all the other Marvel stuff that would come after.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it does fit into that sort of like super lighthearted. I think it's because they got a director on Spider-Man with Sam Raimi that, said, we're taking this seriously. That's why I lump Spider-Man in with Dark Knight and all them.
Spider-Man 2 even more so.
Yeah, exactly. And so then The Dark Knight comes out and it makes $500 million or whatever. I was like, this is the one that we're going to start seeing this type of movie all the time. And then Marvel that same year had Iron Man, and Iron Man sort of with all that plan that they had, and DC obviously didn't have a plan. They had Nolan and they had Batman.
That was it. Yeah.
And that was it. And they weren't thinking about Justice League at this point. It's debatable if they were thinking about Justice League when they made it. But I thought that was going to be the one. But Iron Man, with their plan to do this Avengers movie and everything like that, you could start seeing the sort of everything tipping towards Marvel at that point, even though Dark Knight was the one that was the true class of that summer and everything. Mm-hmm. It's the sort of the beginning of what's probably going to define this decade.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we get to that, I don't know if we're going to try to define it while we're in it, but
yeah, I don't know.
But it is one of those type of things. I think the influence of what happens in that decade has shot
it's everything to do with it, because every huge property is either Star Wars or comic book movie.
Just wait until Disney buys 20th Century Fox's entertainment division.
Right.
And they have everything. You know what's going to make it even better is when they take everyone from Infinity War, all 42 heroes, and they add all the X-Men, all the Fantastic Four, all in the same movie.
It's going to be fantastic.
I can't tell you how little I'm looking forward to that. I keep seeing on Twitter people saying, like, well, Disney's done a good job so far making good Marvel movies and good Star Wars movies. And I'm like, that's not necessarily the point.
Yeah.
My point here with Infinity War and this proposed what'll happen for sure is that there's already too many characters.
Mm-hmm.
And we also start to lose a creative edge once we bleed it all together under one roof. Even if, no matter how hard you try or what director you hire, Marvel has already proven that everything from posters to trailers to score, there's a certain approved MCU look, feel, sound. And I don't want to see all the characters rolled into that same creative style. But I don't want Comcast to swoop in and buy Fox either.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that they care that much about quality.
Well,
So
what you're going to get is because the DCEU has shown that, of course it's going to keep rolling it out, but it's taken so many series of hits that it's inexorably going to alter the direction that they're going to take, with Snyder kind of fading in the background and stuff like that. With Disney / Marvel, they're the Titanic. They're bigger than the Titanic, so they can weather, if something doesn't make any money or got terrible reviews or something like that, then they can weather that storm and be fine and just roll out their next, Black Panther or something like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, anyway, I don't know why I've diverted us so hard on that.
I did see Chris Evans tweeted something about maybe he'd finally have a Captain America versus Human Torch or some sort of thing. That.
Not that he should be following me, but I tweeted 12 hours before that. I know you want to have your Johnny Storm team up with Steve Rogers, but this is a bad thing if they buy. Of course, Chris Evans swoops in and steals my joke and gets all my press.
Yes. This town needs an enema. So the comic book movies are doing, are laying the groundwork for what we see in this decade and everything. We're also starting to see, every time I think of this decade, I think of this is where everything seems to go to shit with action movies for me.
Interesting.
Except for comic book movies. Comic book movies have their own, even comic book movies have bad action scenes. But this is the decade of Transformers, and Transformers is 2007. It comes out.
Well, the Fast and Furious
movies. It just, I don't know. It seems like every big movie that seemed to come out was just loud and Michael Bay inspired type of stuff.
The lone, outlier there, or I guess exception to the rule, would be maybe the Bourne series.
Yeah.
And I think that series actually had a lot of influence on at least a certain type of action film, everything from Taken to the way Bond shifted to be much more like Bourne and much less like a classic, Sean Connery Bond, and remove a lot of the camp.
Do you think that's a bad thing ultimately because of the way that it was Greengrass that did it?
Yeah, Doug Liman on the first one, and then
Lyman,
you had Greengrass after that.
But then they both kind of had that shaky cam. I guess it's not hyper edited, but it's definitely edited roughly, intentionally.
It's made to be like avant-garde type of thing, or like you are there in that fight. It works in some instances.
It works there, but it's the co-opting of people, the Taken Two and stuff like that.
It can be dickish in other parts of those movies, but where I think it really works is when he jumps from the one building into the other building and starts fighting that dude in the bathroom.
God, it's Desh. It's one of my favorite fights.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's where that type of style works so well, because it's so immediate and so because it's a sort of a fantastical type of shot. He's jumping from this one building to another, but as soon as he gets in there, it's like they're throwing fists at each other and everything, and it's just a really well-made action scene. A lot of times, though, you sit there and go, okay, he's sitting there sipping a Coke. Why is everything shaking?
By the way, I saw a GIF, I think, on Reddit a week or two ago of that scene, but that showed the cameraman that trailed behind Matt Damon.
Oh, yeah?
So Matt Damon, or Stump Guy, whoever it was, runs and jumps, and it's a set. There's like pads down below or whatever. Runs and jumps, and the cameraman follow him, runs and jumps.
Oh, my
Holy
God.
shit.
I've got to see that.
Yeah, I'll find it and send it to you.
Oh, my God. But yeah, you're right. Bourne really was a huge influence, and it's kind of a miracle that it was, because Bourne Identity, it did decent in the box office. It wasn't, I wouldn't consider it a failure or anything. It was definitely a medium-sized hit. But it was one of the last movies I remember people saying that the video rentals meant something on something that developed an audience. And Bourne Identity, once it became a video hit, that's where they started saying, all right, let's make Bourne Supremacy and everything. Because Bourne Identity, I don't think they were going to make a sequel to that, based on the money that
not
they made
on the box office of the just initial run.
It was the very first time it's maybe the last time I heard of a movie being a video hit, and then they made a sequel later. I mean, I guess now that you have different forms of that. It's not
Sure.
the same thing though, because you're not going to Blockbuster.
Right.
You know, you're not going to that anymore. But it did have a lot of influence. You're right. The James Bond movies, especially, and the James Bond movies are always prone to be influenced by whatever's popular at the
Sure.
time. So it made sense that they became like Bourne as well. And what was the other one that you mentioned? There was another
Taken.
It's
Mhm.
another great example of that. Yeah. What else? What else?
I got one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be Pixar's decade.
Hmm.
Because if I'm wrong, let me know. But I'm pretty sure this is the decade of that run of Finding
It is.
Nemo, The Incredibles,
Wall-E,
Ratatouille, Up.
Mm-hmm. It is, especially the middle part of the decade.
Yeah,
The middle part of the decade is where The Incredibles came out. That's where it started that just amazing run.
and I think that because Finding Nemo was 2003,
Except for Cars.
Except
Yeah.
for that's what I'm saying. But even Cars, even though it takes a lot of shit, I think it's a little bit like a Nickelback situation where. It can't possibly be as bad as everybody says it is, and I'm still charmed by that movie. But anyway, that big run of 5, this was the decade when everyone started thinking they can't miss.
Right.
Like they're never going to do anything worse than an A movie. They have since then, but this was where that idea solidified. I think after Toy Story and Monsters Inc. and Bugs Life, we were like, okay, well, we really like these movies. Let's see where they go. And then I think even in this decade, we had one like Toy Story 3 was in this decade at least.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah.
And Monsters Inc. was in this decade as well. Monsters Inc. started the decade.
Okay.
And then you had Finding Nemo. And then it was Incredibles, Cars, Wall-E, Up. No, Ratatouille, Wall-E, Up. That run right there is insane. How good it was, and that's like I said. When I thought Pixar was going to make, more adult type features, like I wouldn't have been surprised if they had stayed the direction they were and they didn't get bought out by Disney completely and everything. That they would have had 2 wings of their animation. They would have made the ones that we all know and love, and they would have made some other ones that would have been a little bit harder edge.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been R-rated, but
Not
they might have had
necessarily.
PG-13 or something in there.
Sure.
I thought for sure that's what was going to happen. Of course, once Disney buys something, nothing is R-rated anymore.
That's basically true.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought Pixar had a really good chance. I definitely thought of Judd Apatow, and then I also thought of your boy, Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah. The thing with Paul Thomas Anderson is that he only had 2 movies that came out in this decade.
Yeah, it's insane.
They were amazing. It was Punch Drunk Love and There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
But because I thought the same thing. I was like, man, this is because he had Boogie Nights and then he had something after that,
Magnolia.
right? Magnolia, right? 99, right?
99.
So then he does Punch Drunk Love, which was way underseen at the time.
Man, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's crazy. He did
didn't
a lot
ma-
of Fiona Apple
He didn't
videos
make
too.
anything between 2007 and 2010?
There were music videos and like shorts and stuff like that.
What the fuck was he doing?
Yeah, and then 2012 was The Master.
Yeah,
right?
he started. I mean, he started to pick it up comparatively to what he used to do.
Mhm.
He used to be almost Kubrickian in the fact that he would make movies like every 5 or 6 years or
Right.
whatever. But now it seems like he's come out with one pretty much every couple of years or so. He's come out.
Oh,
with
take it back then. I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
well, because that's immediately what I thought too. Because There Will Be Blood is such a standout, and it was so hyped, and it was maybe the movie of the decade. I mean, we oh man, there's a lot of contenders for movie of the decade in this. As we went through in the bracket,
Yeah, I mean,
there's a ton of these that made the final cut outside, like the wild card or at large picks or something like that didn't win the best of the year, but that just snuck their way into it. I mean, and then you've got the prestige films of Children of Men and City of God and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, even Amelie.
yeah.
You said Prestige.
Yeah, and The Prestige too.
Well, I'm thinking Nolan might have a shot now because we already talked about
Nolan's
the 2 Batman
decade's
movies.
pretty crazy. You have Memento
Yep.
kicks it off.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who love Insomnia.
I do.
I need to see it again.
I like it.
And then he has these Batman movies, and then he has The Prestige.
Yep.
And
And Inception hits 2010.
Right.
So it's I mean, as director, I don't know if there's very many. He became a true star director.
Absolutely.
Because like the trailer for Inception was like, it was Nolan and DiCaprio. Basically, that's all you need to know about this.
Yeah.
Nobody really would have watched that movie if it wasn't for those two people.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, look, can you imagine if that was like Vince Vaughn and like
And Brett Ratner.
and it's the same trailer? It's the same trailer. Nobody would have watched that. And then no offense to Vince Vaughn. Obviously, lots of offense to Brett Ratner.
No, he influenced everything, man, because Memento kicked off this whole, you can tell movies differently, and people were taking chances. Things like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, things like Charlie Kaufman-esque type of stuff happening. And then, obviously he was part of the reason that comic book movies are taken seriously with the first two Batmans that he did. And then Inception changed like so much about like how movies are shot, what you can do from perspective, and the universes folding in on each other and everything. So, I mean, he had a huge influence in this decade alone. And then it's just kind of continued. I mean, he had what we don't like is the third Batman movie. And
Dark Knight Rises?
Dark Knight Rises.
I like it more than you do.
And Interstellar, which was great, but kind of
this decade, though. I mean, this is
No, what I'm saying is that he really was meteoric in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And you could say maybe plateaued off a little bit. Besides, maybe
I think Dunkirk is him at his best.
Yeah.
I think,
and Interstellar is up there too, even though I guess it's a little unfairly shit on sometimes by just for stupid things. I think sometimes. I mean, McConaughey crying, I love that scene. I don't know why that became like the mega meme that it did.
Mega meme.
But so yeah, and we're going back to the franchise stuff here. Like, I guess Lord of the Rings kind of sort of started us off here in this decade. You have and it's funny, 9/11 also started to creep into how people perceived those movies. I mean, you even have one called The Two Towers.
Yep.
And then you have people who are saying this is taking a conservative look at, that's the crazy thing. People started, this is a conservative look about war. Like how it's meaningful to go out and fight your enemies, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's just what you're reading into it. It's the political times and everything. But it sort of started that. I think it started it because you also had stuff like Kill Bill being split into two parts. And there was even a thought that Alfonso Cuarón was going to do Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban that way, which is another, by the way, franchise that was all through this decade.
Right.
And I think studios started looking at how can we weren't into the universe stage yet. We weren't into that whole, let's make not only the main story, but let's make a lot of side stories as well.
Sure.
We weren't at that stage yet. I think they were still trying to figure out, how do we do a main story and extend that over a number of movies and everything? Because that's why we get The Hobbit, the 3 movies later, and stuff like that. But
well, you want to talk about influence, Lord of the Rings. If there's no Lord of the Rings movies from Peter Jackson, we don't have Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That show never gets greenlit. The
Totally.
books are still out there, and he's probably finished them by now.
Yeah.
But we would never get that series if it had not been. Now, there was a lot of bad fantasy that came out, but there's a lot of shows on TV that I don't watch that have big followings that basically owe themselves to these movies, and they owe themselves to Game of Thrones, which owes itself to these movies.
Yeah.
Like the Vikings one I haven't seen, and Outlander, and there's a bunch of shows that are apparently good that I think wouldn't exist if these 3 movies hadn't done what they did. They were so good. They pleased such a wide audience, new fans. You had this, 5 decades deep pocket of built-in fans who loved Tolkien, and there were way the hell more of them than anybody ever thought there were. And then he made, he just made it with respect and made great films, and everybody gave a great performance.
Something that I think the studio sort of forgot when they saw the success of Lord of the Rings, and I think that Harry Potter is sort of a different kind of phenomenon. It didn't have nearly the same kind of like decades long, fathers exchanging with their children and all this other type of stuff. That didn't have that type of thing, but it was enough. I think Harry Potter was enough of a phenomenon that they were able to do it. But then they started making anything that was a bestseller.
Yeah.
And a bestseller doesn't mean anything, guys. I just hate to tell you, I hate to break that news to you. Bestseller doesn't mean anything. It just means that, it sold some books essentially.
Yeah, and the Harry
People
Potter
know
thing.
about it.
Yeah, the Harry Potter thing being such a recent phenomenon, I think worked in its favor because it was in that sweet spot. It wasn't like, a year ago I heard about the Hunger Games or something like that. Not that did poorly or anything like that, but it had that gap to where people were excited about it. They've gotten older. This is nostalgia. This was new fans. It was Chris Columbus coming in and doing the thing. It was John Williams. It was like really creative, great people doing this. And, I think everybody was just kind of swept up in the majesty of it. Plus, it's an awesome story, too.
Mm-hmm.
The first chapter of the first Harry Potter book is one of the best first chapters I've ever read. And that's weird to say, but it was totally engaging. It would suck you into this universe immediately. And I was absolutely hooked. It was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And plus, the movies were really, really good.
No, they're good.
For what they are. The first two, obviously, were very childlike because they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting at that third one, you start making this pivot, and then you definitely do it at Order of the Phoenix. And that's one of the most enjoyable, more than a trilogy franchises that I think I've ever seen on film.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's almost impossible to keep up a level of quality over 8 films.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
It's 8.
With so much. Yeah. Thank you for West Texas. I lost my train of thought. I think it's really hard. This is why I think you can look at the Fast and Furious franchise, and of course it's getting sillier and sillier and sillier, and the joke is they're going to space next, and then of course they will probably. But, there are movies early on in that franchise that I think you could call good or at least enjoyable. Like the first one's a decent watch, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
quarter mile at the time.
Especially when they fight about that tuna sandwich, basically. Or that's actually the girl. But anyway.
I'm sorry. Did you have another thought there?
No, I think Warner Brothers did a really good job keeping the consistency there. I guess Marvel is doing it too. If you consider that shared universe similar enough to Harry Potter's universe. Because Marvel doesn't really have a clunker yet. Thor 2.
Thor the Dark World is a piece of shit.
Yeah, but the first Thor can be enjoyable. You can make your case. That's maybe the only clunker in the whole bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just hard. I think it just inevitably one of these Star Wars movies is going to suck.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be true, but hey, let's not act like 3 of the first 6 didn't suck. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what was Senor Spielbergo up to this decade?
Well, he has Minority Report.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably his best movie of the decade.
I love that movie.
I'm gonna say that's probably his best one. He has War of the Worlds, which is
I love that movie too.
That's probably only enjoyable because of Spielberg.
Yeah, War of the Worlds has that one shot I love where the video camera's on the ground and it zooms in on the little viewfinder.
Total Spielberg, man.
Yeah. He's got The Terminal. Catch Me If You Can. That was the same year. Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can came out the same year.
That's a hell of a year.
Yeah. And I don't know. Catch Me If You Can might be my favorite of his. No, both of those movies I love so much.
Yeah, they're both great.
Yeah, Spielberg was doing decent work for sure. I don't know if he did anything that went above and beyond or anything.
Yeah, I was just I'd like to throw his name out.
Oh, he's going to be. I mean, as long as he's alive, his influence is going to hit every decade.
What do you guys think? Did you have the Ready Player One trailer, the full trailer, when you went to see whatever it was we reviewed last, Ragnarok?
Mm-mm. Well, it may have been. We got in there late, I think.
I've seen it. I don't know if I saw it on Ragnarok.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, it reminds me of AI.
It does. I just I went with a buddy, and he turned to me and he was like, "What do you think about that?" And I kind of shrugged because the trailer doesn't do anything for me. But I was like, "It is Spielberg, though, and that's probably enough to get me to watch it."
Speaking of AI, so he did AI to start the decade,
right?
Then he had
just another movie I like more than most.
Yeah, I need to watch that again because I don't think I gave it a fair shake when I first saw it.
It ends up feeling it doesn't mesh perfectly, but it does end up feeling like Spielberg directing something that Kubrick planned.
And I should be totally on board with that.
You would think.
I just wasn't. Like, it was too
It's
cartoony
still
to
not
me.
the way Kubrick would have done it, though.
No.
It feels like a Kubrick story, and those two directors are so different. It just doesn't make sense.
But Jude Law is so fucking good. It's worth
Mhm.
it's worth the whole movie rewatch. I think he's so awesome.
I gotta watch that again. Then, so you mentioned Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can. Then The Terminal, which I actually like more than most. War of the Worlds. Then he did Munich.
Yeah,
which-
Munich, which is also is the same year as War of the Worlds. He did this weird thing with like 2 in a year somehow, some way.
Yeah.
He'd do that. Munich is a better movie than it gets.
Oh, no,
credit.
it's
I agree.
awesome, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
What is it? What is the line from 40-Year-Old Virgin or Knocked Up?
Well,
It's like-
somebody brings up Munich, and then Seth Rogen's like Munich, and then somebody, I don't know who says it, but somebody's like, finally a movie where we get to do the killing.
It's Seth Rogen who says it. He's like it's like every other movie the Jews are the victims, but in this one we're capping motherfuckers.
Oh, man.
And then he ended his run in the decade by doing Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Lord Moses.
Which was the other thing that I wanted to bring up. We started seeing this, like, somebody was talking to me recently about how Harrison Ford seems to be doing that thing that athletes do when they're in their final year and
Yep.
they go to the stadium and they get the gift and all that type of thing. He's doing that sort of that like end of the career type of
The retirement tour.
the retirement
Yeah.
tour, the farewell tour or whatever, because he does this, and of course he ends up in Force Awakens later, and then he ends up in Blade Runner and
Yeah.
all this other stuff.
He's going to do the long-awaited sequel to 6 Days, 7 Nights.
Yes, of course, because
I'm pretty sure that movie got made just because he wanted to like show off his pilot skills.
How about Hollywood Homicide?
I actually read that he's making a movie called The Fugitive again, where he actually gets wrongly imprisoned or arrested. For...
No, this time he really did do it.
Yes.
And they're like, well, last time we went through a lot of shit on this guy. We sure. And Tommy Lee Jones is like, I know this guy did it. I know he did it.
You know what? I would kind of like be into that movie.
Yeah, I know.
What have we done?
I know.
What have we done? I'm sure Tommy would be down.
But we start seeing
Probably so, yeah.
we start seeing that sort of that nostalgia thing start to creep in
Mhm.
again, where let's revive a lot of these.
Well, even the Transformers qualifies under that.
Yeah.
And you're right, Crystal Skull coming back, and that just doubles down and exponentially increases as you move forward from 2010.
By the way, if there's anything that proves that name recognition means the most for just about anything, King of the Crystal Skull made $400 million.
Yeah, no kidding.
Here in the U.S.
Well, and it was just, it's not like it didn't get bad reviews.
Yeah.
Before most of those people went to see it.
Right.
They just went because it was Indiana Jones.
I'm trying to think if it really did get that kind of bad reviews, though.
I've got it.
Hold on.
All right.
Before you're looking up
I'm
Rotten
just saying that I've
you're
got it loaded up.
Yeah, you got it on Rotten Tomatoes.
Mhm.
I think it was higher than we think.
All right.
I think there were people who loved it and it got a pass.
Let's see. Where do you think it is?
I think it was in the 70%.
So like a 7 out of 10
Yeah,
on Rotten Tomatoes?
I think so.
I think it's probably more like a 5.
5.
What did we give it in this room? I mean, I would say
3?
like a 3 out of 10. Like
Yeah.
it's a really shitty movie, right?
Yeah.
77%.
Yeah.
You
Rotten
were on it,
Tomatoes.
buddy. Nice call.
Yeah.
I
And
hate
6.2 on IMDb.
Yeah. It's just one of those movies that I remember talking to people about, and they said, "Hey, I liked it," or
Really?
they just people kind of gave it a pass.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I think the mega hatred for that movie really occurred later. And I don't know when that really started to seep in. It may have been months later where people got the hangover and they were just kind of like...
It could be when it came out on home video because there's some really shitty CGI in the latter half of that movie.
Well, then, you had the people breaking apart getting in the fridge to protect yourself from atomic blast
Yeah.
and all that.
Totally works.
But yeah, that all the get on that island with the monkeys or whatever it is.
Fucking monkeys.
And there's just all these little cute shots of like whatever groundhogs, gerbils,
Yeah.
what the fuck they are.
Yeah. It's like he had too much sugar with his coffee.
Yeah, man.
Every day they filmed. And it just seeped into the script.
And then of course they decided, because I'm pretty sure this was Lucas's big contribution, they had to put aliens in it somehow.
Great.
And I remember that movie. I mean, I think they had Darabont go and write a script that everybody loved. Everybody loved the Darabont script. And they couldn't get it made because Lucas wanted to put fucking aliens in it.
You know, you'd think
that's
it would
the
be
rumor.
Spielberg that wanted to put the aliens in it because he's got a great track record with aliens.
Yeah.
He may be an asshole in real life. I don't really know, but I feel bad for Frank Darabont.
Yeah.
Because when you let him be Frank Darabont, he makes shit like The Shawshank Redemption.
Mm-hmm.
He makes most of the best Stephen King adaptations in general. But it seems like he keeps getting meddled with. Like with The Walking Dead and like, everybody loves your Indiana Jones script, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to put it over here and we're going to do them with aliens because George is being George.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll even put an Ewok in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
Can I bring up our buddies?
Bring them up.
So this is, I think, the Coen brothers' best decade.
Okay.
So you start off with one of my favorite movies of this decade, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, in 2000.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Yep.
Pretty good.
Then you've got The Man Who Wasn't There, which is a very, very niche
Underrated.
thing, but I love it. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. We'll skip over Intolerable Cruelty.
Please
and
do.
then The Lady Killers, which you like.
Came out the same year.
Yeah, and then they had No Country for Old Men.
Yep.
Boom.
Then they had Burn After Reading.
Mhm.
Like it.
Then they had A Serious Man.
Yep.
Like it.
And 2010 was True Grit. So they
Yeah.
had it. They had
Like
an
it.
amazing year.
I feel that like
Or amazing
True Grit
decade.
gets a raw deal.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, because I went and saw it. Of course, I've never seen the original. This is probably why, by the way. And maybe it's not as good. Maybe they changed the character just enough that people who love the original, and I know I've heard the original is great in its own right. But Haley Steinfeld comes out of nowhere and she goes toe to toe with Jeff Bridges.
Yep.
Jeff Bridges is great. Matt Damon almost steals the movie. I'm trying to figure out what people didn't dig about that.
I have seen both of those movies, and I loved the original. The remake, in my mind, is better.
Yeah, I mean, I just really dig. I've seen it twice. I really dig it both times.
Yeah.
I don't know what people. I feel like when it came out, I may have to do another Rotten Tomatoes contest or something. I feel like when it came out, it didn't get great reviews.
No, it did. I think it did.
It was Best Picture nominee, right?
Yeah, it was a Best Picture nominee and everything.
Okay.
And it may have not have been like, I mean, it's possible it was in the 80%, somewhere around there.
I just feel maybe it was just seen as kind of a letdown from No Country. What is it?
95%.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop guessing things like forever.
No,
I didn't think it'd be that high.
No, I remember it being well reviewed. It's just that I didn't know it was that well reviewed. But no, True Grit has one of those scenes in it that I always like. I wish people would just study it and be like, this is how you make an action scene with suspense and everything. Even though this isn't like an action quote unquote scene, but the scene where he's up on the top of the cliff,
Yeah.
and he's gonna kill that guy, and it's just like it's just one shot,
Yeah.
and you just see the distance between him and the subject, and that's how they shot it and everything. God, yeah, that movie. I need to see that again, actually.
Oh, it's badass.
I haven't seen it in forever.
The first scene between Haley Steinfeld and Jeff Bridges, where she gets him up and she's like, I want to go pursue this man, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's all drunk and belligerent and everything.
Yeah.
And like you said, man, she's right up there with him. And at
Yeah.
the time, she was 14,
Yeah,
something
she
like
was
that.
a lot younger
that.
than she is now. Well, that was a stupid thing.
Yeah. I think she was 11 or 12.
She was
when
young.
Yeah.
But she was awesome, man.
Imagine having the balls to do that. I don't care if I thought I was the best actor in the world. If I was 12 and I'm going up against this guy, I would be petrified.
Yeah.
Now, maybe in real life they did 20 takes to get her there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the whole movie, she's like that. She doesn't back down at all. She just owns it.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a good
definitely a great decade for the Coens.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
But not for Leonard Cohen.
No, not for Leonard Cohen.
Twice. Well,
No.
I'm going to shut up for a while. I don't think my what's
he had
funny
a pretty
meter
good
is off.
I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but I think like the rise of the R-rated comedy, or it came back in this decade. Started with Old School.
I would say
guess.
Old School was really the start. Although Todd Phillips, even before then, Road Trip sort of. I mean, Road Trip wasn't as big as Old School,
Mm-hmm.
but even Road Trip sort of did that. I've tried to trace this back because I like to give Kevin Smith a lot of credit for this, even though he wasn't making like those straight up comedies. They were very much indie comedies that he was making in the 90s and everything. But I think he was the one who really started to set that R-rated comedy back, because it was a lot of the dialogue and stuff was like, oh, you can say that in a movie. Oh, then so you had Road Trip and you had Old School.
Don't you give a little bit to the Fairleys too? There, at least
The
in late
Fairleys,
90s?
yeah, is another one.
Like, there's something about Mary always feels to me like the tipping point, like when raunchy R-rated comedies can make so much money, let's do it, which I think leads to Road Trip and Old School, hangover movies, which led to the Hot Tub Time Machine.
Right.
Somewhere in there we get
No, you're absolutely right. The Fairley brothers all through the 90s there were sort of bringing that back as well. You just didn't see very many people until that There's Something About Mary. You didn't really see a lot like just going for it and everything. And finally, I think after a while then you had the Apatow stuff coming in. And Apatow even, I mean, you look at some of these movies, you're like, wow, there's some just really raunchy things that they're saying.
Oh, God, yeah. And
Yeah.
both in 40-Year-Old Virgin and in Knocked Up.
Yeah.
Especially Knocked Up.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you can do that. There's an audience for it. You can make a ton of money. It's like the sanitization of a PG-13 movie that's trying to be an R movie is completely unnecessary these days.
Mhm.
I don't think an example was Happy Death Day.
Mhm.
Happy Death Day was perfectly fine. It was a fun movie and everything, but there was no reason for that movie to be PG-13.
Nope.
You're not. I can't see it increasing its audience to a percentage to where you're going to lose a lot of money for the
Yeah.
quality. So I don't get it at this point. And we did see the kind of sanitization, in the 90s of comedies in particular. But then getting back into this, we can say what we want to, we can talk how people talk and that kind of thing, and you're gonna be fine. You're gonna, as long as it's good, as long as it's not funny people.
I mean, Deadpool proved that more than anything.
Yeah.
I believe that and then now they've gone to this whole thing, this overcorrection thing, where they're like, okay, well, we'll start making everything R-rated now, and instead of looking at what made Deadpool funny and good and everything, it's like it's that raunch, it's that R-rated stuff. Let's do that. Like, let's just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, I need more fucks.
Yeah, exactly. Let's make Logan and Logan turns out to be really good, but the other ones that come after this, I'm pretty sure are going to be just like, can we find a way to count the fucks that are in this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be on board for an R-rated Batman?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Right.
I think a lot of people would.
That would be really nice.
You almost have to do a Frank Miller story if you did an R-rated Batman.
Yeah, because those graphic novels are fucking intense, man.
And they're either awesome or they're off the chain loopy.
And
Like, there's no in between with that, dude.
that's another thing too, is that if they made an R-rated Batman, don't you think that yes, while you'd have a certain segment of the population that the parents wouldn't allow their kids to watch it, I'd say most of parents are probably going to end up letting them watch it, but just strictly because it's Batman, and who cares if there's like a little extra like violence in it and a couple of fucks. The kids these days,
how many parents are saying no, you can't watch Logan because
Exactly.
Professor X cusses a lot
Right.
or something like that? I don't think there's that much of a difference between there's Hey Driver and the the fucks and everything, but like there's not an appreciable difference in like how offensive it is versus an X-Men Days of Future Past or something like that. I mean, artistically offensive, but
Yeah, man, I'd be all over it.
It's sort of zigzagging back into the comedies. I just thought about this too. It's funny that in the age of when the R-rated comedy came back, Kevin Smith and the Farrelly brothers started not making as many good movies
Right.
that decade. It's strange. The Farrelly brothers, I think they did Stuck on You was one that came out in this decade, and they did Shallow Hal, and they have their merits. They're not good movies,
No.
but they have their merits. Shallow Hal has a good message, but it's like an hour and a half to get to that.
Yeah.
Like,
It's got a few bad messages before it gets to anything good anyway.
Right. And Stuck on You is, I mean, that's both of those movies really have real one note premises, and they're sort of building on that whole let's try to make things, I don't know, they try to do these gross out gags and everything, but they don't work as well anymore. They've sort of worn out by this point.
yeah, I mean, I think you probably hit peak. What came first? Was it Kingpin or Something About Mary came first?
Kingpin.
Kingpin, I think, was the peak of the grossed out humor.
Oh yeah,
Especially that scene with the landlady.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
yeah. Lin Shaye.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's hilarious though to me.
Yeah. It's funny, and they did gross out humor the entire time. Dumb and Dumber has a lot of those bad, like really gross out gags in it. Kingpin obviously does. There's Something About Mary,
Yep.
really goes.
Yep.
It really goes there. But yeah, after a while, I think I don't know. It's funny those two, those three, I guess, directors, like they struggled in that decade.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith tried to come out with a PG-13 movie, Jersey Girl.
Yeah.
That didn't do well. Zach and Miri Make a Porno is kind of, it's.
I think it's funny, but it's nowhere near like the stuff that he did
almost
before.
Like the shock factor wasn't there anymore.
Right.
And so like his movies just kind of blended in and became a lot like a lot of other people's movies and everything. So I don't know. I really like what Kevin Smith is doing now because he's completely branched from that. And even though Yoga Hosers is not, I'm not a big fan of that. But I do like where he went with Red State and Tusk and all.
Did you like Red State?
Yeah, I did. It's not a great movie.
Right.
It's just that it's a different one for him, and I think he does it really well. So,
It reminded me too much of church when I was growing up.
Did you go to Woodsboro?
Yeah. No, but
whatever that place is called.
Westboro,
we did murder
Westboro.
strangers for rituals.
Oh, nice.
I'm kidding.
All right. Hey,
Please don't take that as an admission of guilt.
whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
So as far as owning the decade, I thought Nolan really owned this decade with his influence on comic book movies, with his influence on visual style and storytelling and stuff like that. Plus, he was a writer on all these things too, wasn't he? And particularly with, Inception's kind of cheating at the end of because it's 2010 movie. I think really, like when I think of this in 15 years or so, I'm probably going to look back and say like that stretch from Memento all the way up to Inception was like one of my favorite directing time points in history.
Yeah.
It's almost as good as that run Reiner had with that 5 great movies in a row. I'm still lean Pixar in terms of owning the decade.
I was pretty unmatched.
I can't argue with Nolan, and we don't actually have to vote and pick one. We can all have separate opinions, but I think Nolan's a good. He did own during this decade. I think Pixar just owned it a tiny bit more. Anyway,
I can dig it.
Yeah. I'm probably still going to stick with Apatow, but none of your answers seem wrong to me.
Man, you've got a good point because Apatow also was in on like Talladega Nights and, like you said, Anchorman, and just like every single thing.
help me, Oprah Winfrey. Help me, Jewish guy. That was my favorite outtake on Cars 3, by the way. Help me, Tom Cruise.
Jesus, that's just a crazy run there. Knocked Up, or Talladega Nights, Knocked Up. These are producer things. Super Bad. Walk Hard for Getting Sarah Marshall. Step Brothers, Pineapple Express. Then Year One.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to do with Your Highness?
I'm sure he did, actually.
I don't think so.
That was a Franco.
And it had Danny McBride.
Right. Nope, he didn't. I don't think so.
Interesting.
He did produce Get Him to the Greek.
That sort of, Your Highness was David Gordon Green.
Oh yeah, so it's the tree.
It's sort of the tree thing. You could also possibly even add Danny Boyle into this decade because he's got 28 Days Later. He's got now Sunshine is still kind of a cult type of movie. But
so crazy that it is too.
Yeah. You have Slumdog Millionaire, which is where he won his Oscar and everything.
Didn't he make Millions too?
Yeah. Millions is
was
a good
that
movie.
The same decade?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe he made that early 2004, 2005, somewhere around there.
What did he do after Slumdog?
127 Hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Millions was 2004, which is, another good movie that I don't think many people talk about, but it's a good one. And, Danny Boyle, he shot up through the 90s there. He had Trainspotting, but then, movies that he came out up until The Beach, he didn't become a real name, I don't think, until 28 Days Later became that big, huge type of it was a small hit, but it was still a big enough one that he started. he does this. He's got this eclectic career.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know. So yeah, I mean, I'd maybe mention him. I don't think he's got quite the track record that Nolan does.
What's the overall feeling? Because you've got a good sense of like how the Oscars, the Best Picture went. What's your overall sense of how things went in the 2000s? You had Gladiator, right?
You had Chicago.
Oh yeah.
You had Return of the King, which was to me that's a weird thing. Just that the third chapter of a series is a lone Best Picture and
dominated too that year.
Won every award, like 11 nominations, 11 wins, I believe, or something like that. It might have even been 14.
It even won Best Hobbit.
Yeah, it did, and Best Kiss. You had The Departed.
Oh yeah. Slumdog
Millionaire. You had you had Crash beating Brokeback Mountain 2005, that's an odd one. I mean, the Best Pictures are okay, I guess. I mean, there's some good ones in there. I'm not very high on Gladiator. I know that a lot of people are.
It was almost by default that year.
Would you say that you were not entertained?
It could be. But 2000 had Traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And, so, I mean, they gave the director to Soderbergh, so I don't know why Traffic didn't just go ahead and win. But I don't know. There was a lot of other stuff, I guess, going on with the politicking and everything, because we started seeing that more often. You say the director of the movie that doesn't win or whatever.
So No Country for Old Men won Best Picture.
No Country for Old Men,
Blood,
yeah.
Right? Okay. Did they win Best Director?
Yeah,
too?
they did.
Oh, okay.
It was just like 96 that was the darling of that year.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, overall pretty good movies. It wasn't like the 80s. You look at the Best Pictures of the 80s, it's awful. The 90s, some of them are kind of shrug and give it to them type movies. This one, I don't know. There's some good ones. I thought City of God got shafted.
No kidding.
By the Return of the King train. That was just an unfortunate year for it to come out. In the States, I'm sure it came out before, but it was as a U.S. movie. It was 2003, so it got it lost Best Editing to Return of the King. I mean, I know there's more to the editing than just the length of the movie. But come on, City of God had better editing. I don't know. It's a sneaky good decade.
It really is.
It's sneaky because it seems like all the real good movies were small movies, and I guess
and collected, smooshed together in the same year. Like 2007 was pretty good, 2008 was pretty good, 2005 sucked balls.
Yeah,
but
right?
you had serviceable franchise movies. I don't know. I mean, I guess there were some big movies that were good. I don't know if I would consider them just outstanding City of God, Children of Men type movies, but. I mean, The Dark Knight is the closest to a movie becoming greatness as far as just your typical popcorn flick.
It seems like Spielberg was shooting for that with War of the Worlds, but I don't think he got that far.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. But
let's move on.
I feel like he made exactly the movie he wanted to with that. I don't think he was aiming for anything particular. I mean... And it's a remake too. I mean, it's just we really didn't need it, but
a remake of a remake, essentially, right?
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
No, it's perfectly fine. I could do without the Tim Robbins shit. I could do without the
throwing a baseball with Tom Cruise.
Yeah. That's probably the funniest part of Scary Movie 4, I think is what it is, where he's out throwing and he can't throw the ball. He throws it and it just hits the ground. That was another thing, by the way, that rose during this decade was the after Scary Movie came out, the Friedberg Seltzer parodies.
The terrible parody movies.
Yes. I'm glad that a lot of like different media outlets picked up on what was so bad about those, which was the reference. There was the references that they kept making. It was all references. There wasn't anything to it other than references. And I even saw, I can't remember who it was. It was either Talk Soup or something like one of those that made a skit where they called it reference movie. And that's what they all are and they were weird references too. They were like MTV references.
Yeah.
You know, like there was a whole thing in the I think it was Epic Movie. And of course all of them run together.
Yeah.
But I believe it was Epic Movie where they had that whole thing where like out of nowhere suddenly it's Ashton Kutcher and Punked.
Yeah.
Somebody dressed up as Ashton Kutcher doing a Punked episode, and just I was like, okay, and then just constant like, and like there was an MTV Cribs one somewhere in there.
There was one I think I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, on Chris's old review site. It was one of the things like Date Movie or Epic Movie or something like that, where he would always have a screenshot of the poster or whatever. I think you put like a piece of shit or something like that.
I didn't
or
put
it was a dumpster or something.
I didn't
like
put a piece of shit. Let's just make that clear. But it was Date Movie, and I was like, there's none of the images from this movie really do it justice. And so I went and Googled like garbage or something like that, and yeah, it's like a landfill or something like a pile of trash, and good God, man, and there was a funny thing to me too about like in the Epic Movie they had this big huge like scene in there where they were commenting on how old these kids in Harry Potter are, and like I was like, they're not that old.
Yeah.
Like there's got to be some truth in what you're saying. And I know that even in an Apatow movie, what movie was it that he did? They had Jonah Hill come in and start commenting on how old everybody looked and everything. I'm like, the oldest that Daniel Radcliffe ever was in any of those movies was 21.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be like a through high school type of thing.
Yeah.
So 18, I mean, you're nowhere near Beverly Hills 90210 territory
Yeah, no shit.
where they were 30-year-old people like being teenagers and stuff. And they're making these, you know, I was like, yeah, there's got to be some truth to your comedy for me to laugh. And like, yeah, they were all, I think, decent age to play the characters that they were playing. It wasn't like just whoa, wait a minute. He looks like he's got a day job at the gas station. He comes home to his wife and kids and shit like that. And
Comes home and barely knows his own daughter.
Exactly. But anyway, we have diverted again.
Yes.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too. But I don't know. There's probably other things that we can talk about on this decade, but I can't think of anything right now.
Well, I mean, we talked a lot about the individual movies when we did both the best of the years we've been alive and then the bracket. So I think we've kind of covered our bases, and I'm glad that we went this entire discussion without mentioning Avatar.
Ooh. Until then.
Notice how you brought up Avatar by saying we didn't bring it up?
Yep. You want to move to questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
I want the truth.
Hey, this is going to be a fun one. Pick a movie and cast one of you as the villain and one of you as the hero.
Oh.
This example is I would put Chris and Jeremy in Back to the Future, where Jeremy is Marty and Chris is Biff. And Barrett can be Doc. Okay. Or I would want to cast Chris and Barrett in Die Hard, where Chris is John McClane and Barrett is Hans Gruber.
I would be a
Interesting.
terrible Biff, by the way. I would be a terrible Biff because I would be like, do I really have to be this fucking stupid? I wouldn't be able to get into
Think, McFly. Think.
I need time to retype it. All right. I went with three combos here.
All right.
So
Round robin.
so that nobody is left out of anything.
Sweet.
So with Barrett and Jeremy, I don't know why. So with Barrett, because of his background in psychology and everything, and that he likes to call himself Doc a lot, which was funny with the Back to the Future thing where they said you could have played Doc.
Papa Doc.
Yeah, Papa Doc.
Yeah.
I started thinking of like evil, sinister doctor roles for you and stuff. So have you in Extreme Measures playing Gene Hackman's character.
Wow.
What was the catchphrase from that? What didn't he have a catchphrase in the trailer?
They're fueling their syringes.
Yeah,
Oh wait, no, that's not it.
his thing in there was like, if you had to kill one person to cure cancer, wouldn't you have to do that?
Yeah.
His whole thing in Extreme Measures is that he's growing nerves. He's able to grow nerves, and like he's getting these homeless people as unwitting guinea pigs who think that they're getting paid or whatever, but they're not. He's killing them essentially.
Interesting.
And,
I haven't seen that
No,
in forever.
it's really not.
And no, it's not. It's not a good movie. Hugh Grant is the Jeremy Scott role.
I can do such a good British accent.
Indeed, you don't need to be British to be Hugh Grant's character, though. And it is, and you know, there of course maybe you do have to be British in the one part where he's like, you know, you are kind of a creepy fellow, aren't you? But
That's interesting. Oh, wow. I used to grow neurons actually.
yeah.
So out of stem cells, so
Ooh.
I could grow some nerves.
You
and-
might want to watch Extreme Measures just for the, you know, I don't know. Is there any nostalgia? No, there's no nostalgia.
Well, it's a Gene Hackman thing.
It is.
That's
It
fine.
is. For me and Jeremy, I have me playing Dennis Hopper and him playing Keanu Reeves in Speed.
Oh,
I don't care about your crime. Whatever you did, I'm sure you're sorry.
I don't know you, man. We're just cool.
There's a bomb on this bus. If it goes below 50, it explodes. Yeah, bullshit, man. Explode. But I could be an amazing Dennis Hopper. I could be angry about my job. I can have that kind of that sense memory of working at a movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
He was a cop, but movie theaters are just as infuriating, I think.
It's got to be close.
It's got to be really close. But no, I can be a disgruntled retired worker or something. I could be a retired cop who's like he's like, look, all I got out of this was a cheap gold watch, buddy.
Yeah.
You know?
I like the scenes where he's up like in his control room and like he's just kind of dancing around, like eating a sandwich and shit like that. Like it makes it more of like a human character. He's not like this omnipotent, even though he's got all the monitors. He doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
That's what I like. That's what I like about that character.
Yeah. And for me and you, Barrett, I have me playing Jack Nicholson and you playing Louise Fletcher in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, all right.
We could probably switch roles on that too, if we wanted to.
I would fit nicely into a nurse's dress.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What would your mother say, Billy?
But yeah, I mean, yeah, that would be. I think that'd be choice. That'd be a choice hero villain thing.
So it ends up with me giving you electroconvulsive therapy.
Yes, absolutely.
And wrecking your brain.
Right, or me giving it to you, one or the other. It doesn't matter.
I spent so much time thinking about this that I ended up on a pretty mediocre answer because that happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose the negotiator because originally I was thinking I don't want any of us to play the villain, but we could still square off.
So
Chris would be the Samuel L. Jackson role,
Mm-hmm.
and I would be the Kevin Spacey role.
Mm-hmm.
And Bear, I'll let you choose if you want to be the villain, which is I would call that J.T. Walsh probably.
Yeah.
Or you could be the Paul Giamatti comic relief side character who's also a hostage.
Oh, come on, Samuel Jackson was the villain of that movie.
Well, I mean, if you want, if you look at it literally,
you're just watching that movie wrong.
Oh, okay. That's all I did.
Oh, nice.
So
I like
it's
it.
your turn now.
I've got one that I had when we first posed this question, and then I have one that I just thought about this morning. So the one that I thought about, it's in Tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
And in Tombstone, I think it would be perfect for Jeremy to be playing Wyatt Earp, the Kurt Russell character, and then Chris to be playing either Curly Bill or Johnny Ringo. And then I would be the Sam Elliott character because I want a big mustache and that voice.
Does Johnny Ringo last very long in Tombstone?
He lasts until Doc Holliday kills him in the duel.
Oh, okay. I for some reason I thought he was. I don't know. I thought he was. I don't know.
Who
I haven't
am I
seen
again?
it forever.
So you're Wyatt Earp.
All right.
Yeah. Hell's coming with you, man.
Hell's coming with me. I get to club people over the head with the butt of a gun.
No, Curly Bill is the Powers Booth character that is the leader of the Cowboys until he gets killed at the creek site, where Kurt Russell's like, no. And after that, there's a great scene after that where he kills Curly Bill. They're sitting around talking to Doc Holliday, and they're like, "Where's Wyatt?" And he's like, "He's down by the creek, walking on water." Yeah. But then I thought about another thing, because late last night I watched The Ref. Remember The Ref?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I love The Ref.
I would love to be
I like
the
Kevin
Dennis
Spacey
Leary
movie.
character And Jeremy could be the Kevin Spacey.
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
Chris could be the Judy.
So I'm the guy that
Judy
basically
Davis
just takes all the shit the whole movie.
He doesn't. He gives a lot of shit too.
Okay, well,
That's a movie that falls apart in the middle of it, but is pretty enjoyable all the way through.
That's Ted Demme.
Ted Demme.
Yeah, brother of Jonathan.
They had this great scene at the beginning because they're fighting married couple and they're at the therapist's office, and he's processing with him, and at the end he's like, can we keep the voices down? And they both turn to him. They're like, "Fuck you." That's funny. Anyway, that's got a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. The Ref.
Yeah,
it's pretty enjoyable. I remember.
Yeah, it's I really like it.
It's funny they wait until the very end to give Dennis Leary that like super rant of like, I'm gonna push you in a cannon and I'm gonna shoot you out and then I'm gonna have your bits like on my fire and Okay, next question. What films from a director that usually gets a ton of praise that you just don't like or get? Now, I like this question a lot. The example that they give is, as much as I love film, the different kinds of film, I cannot get into Wes Anderson films. I understand that.
I know people like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if... Okay, so I'm going to say Guillermo del Toro on this one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I dislike the movies like the question is saying that he dislikes Wes Anderson movies. But I think Del Toro has gotten this ride as this like amazing director that is undeserved, in my opinion. I mean, I will grant that Pan's Labyrinth is a masterpiece. But I'm not going to grant that the Hellboys are going to be like Hellboy isn't like an amazing movie. Those movies are good, but they're not like anything that I'm like, oh my God, that Guillermo del Toro, man, he really knocked that shit out of the park. Like nobody could have done that. And then I'm not a big fan of Pacific Rim at all.
Oh, really?
I'm not either.
Yeah.
The trailers for this sequel, oh my God, are they cringy?
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh my God.
And he did Blade 2 and he did Mimic and there's a couple I haven't seen.
Well, The Shape of Water, his new one, is supposed to be
great.
Amazing.
But it also, the trailer for that movie
It looks like every
everything that I've ever seen from him before, and he's very good visually. Like there's nothing wrong with his visuals at all, but I always feel like his story takes a back seat, a lot like Tim Burton, although I can actually point to several Tim Burton movies that I love.
Yeah.
But I can't point to very many that I love with Guillermo del Toro. And he's a guy I want to love, but I so far have not had the track record that says I need to watch, that I really like any of his movies. And I haven't seen that Crimson Peak. I heard that Crimson Peak wasn't very good.
Well, it seems like he's reliant on visuals at this point. In fact, I heard an interview with him about The Shape of Water where the reason that it might be better than like his standard features is that he spent a lot more time on story. Like, yes, he spent a lot of time on the creatures and stuff and the creature and how it looks and how it operates. Apparently, they got it anatomically correct to where it could have sex with the main character. It's not a spoiler. He talked about it. But even in Pan's Labyrinth, the trailer and like all the promotional is about the guy with the eyes in his hands and stuff like that. The same thing with the Strain show that he did for FX. Like everything is visual and it is cool, but you can't carry a whole movie like that.
And he came up at the time when he came up. They called him the Three Amigos. You had Alejandro G. Inarritu and you had Alfonso Cuarón. They were all listed together. The way everything started out, it looked like Guillermo del Toro was going to have the biggest career out of those guys. But those two other guys have long surpassed him, have made great movies that I loved since I ever heard of the Three Amigos.
You don't see him making The Revenant or Gravity or something like that.
No, you don't. Now, I'm sure he has that in him. That's the thing. I'm sure he has it in him. He's just never done it. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth. I'll give him that. And then, yes, there's probably a couple of early movies that I haven't seen that maybe approach that. And I'm sorry if I haven't seen those, but everything that I have seen, I'm like, okay.
Apology accepted.
Right.
We are the three amigos. David O. Russell. Who had a stretch there where he seemed to get nominated every year. His films did, from like The Fighter through American Hustle. Even Joy, I think, got nominated. I think Silver Linings Playbook is pretty good. I really like Three Kings.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen another one of his movies that I really cared about or got.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. You didn't like I Heart Huckabees?
No.
No.
Yeah, I Heart Huckabees is a piece of shit.
You didn't like that at all?
No, I don't like that movie at all. He started off with Spanking the Monkey, which is a decent movie. Three Kings was fun.
Mm-hmm.
What's the there's one I'm missing in the 90s. That one with Tay Leone and Ben Stiller.
Oh, Flirting with Disaster.
Flirting with Disaster.
Yeah.
He did that.
That was good.
Yeah, that was good. And then yeah, I mean, I like Silver Linings Playbook probably better than you do. But then after that, yeah, there's a lot of kind of. I mean, I like The Fighter probably better than you do too. But American Hustle has some signs of where it seems like he's kind of breaking down a little bit. And I never have seen Joy. So, but you're right. He does seem to have this. Sudden, like out of nowhere love from critics and everything, which is kind of weird considering his reputation.
Yeah. Well, and even that some of the actors just keep wanting to work with him over and over again.
Yeah.
Like Jennifer Lawrence and
Amy Adams.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper are both
Bradley
in
Cooper.
both in Joy, both in American Hustle,
Silver
and
Linings
both in
Playbook.
Silver Linings
Yeah, yeah.
Playbook. So reputation aside, there must be something.
Which is weird
People
too.
see that we
I've
don't.
heard him in interviews, and he's interesting to listen to and everything. He's not like an
He's
asshole.
not throwing things at the
No, he's not
interview.
throwing things at Lily Tomlin. But yeah, I'm guessing behind the scenes he's just kind of that dictator type of director.
I actually saw a headline on Reddit. I did not click through, so that makes me a total authority on what I'm about to say.
Indeed.
But the headline said it was one of the TIL Today I Learned on the subreddit, and it was that Steven Spielberg was actually pretty demanding and mean to his cast and crew until somewhere on the set of, I think it was Jaws, Kathleen Kennedy pulled him aside and reamed him and forever changed the way he acted as a director.
Interesting.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think people can get a reputation for this kind of stuff that at least begins at a place of artistic integrity and passion, and in some cases it gets a little too far.
Mm-hmm.
David Russell.
My pick is Robert Rodriguez.
Oh man, I
That's a
would
good
pick
one.
this if you hadn't.
Yeah,
I'm the same way.
Shrug,
constant shrug.
It's weird because I think he was in a similar ballpark as like Richard Linklater because they're both from Austin. He did a lot of stuff, crossover with Quentin Tarantino, and he did From Dusk Till Dawn. He directed From Dusk Till Dawn. Obviously did, a part of the screenplay, and Quentin Tarantino did the rest of it, and you can tell the difference in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I love From Dusk Till Dawn, but otherwise, like I never really got into El Mariachi. That was, supposed to be one of the greatest indie movies of the '90s.
Well, El Mariachi gets a lot of slack because it was made for $7,000, maybe even less. So that's why it does. I think. I mean, it's one of those things. Well, look at what he did with this amount of money. Even though, if you were to not know that and just pop it in,
yeah,
it would be a different story, right?
I mean, it looks perfectly fine. I just never got really into the characters. I thought Desperado was just overwrought.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and Antonio Banderas is perfectly fine, and
But
Salma Hayek is
Desperado does have an appearance from the guy I always call the Hispanic Phil Hartman.
What?
The guy that plays the villain is the guy for the same villain from Clear and Present Danger.
It's oh god, I used to know this guy's name.
I'm sure you do. I don't.
I used to know it because it's something like Almeida or something like that.
Tony Almeida.
No.
Well, it's funny because every time I heard Tony Almeida's name, I would think of this guy.
It's like you could ask a Simpsons artist to draw a Hispanic version of Phil Hartman, and this is what they would draw.
It's Joaquin D. Almeida.
There you go.
There you go.
I'm sure everybody at home's like, oh, that guy.
But there's little parts. There's parts in Spy Kids. Other people really like Spy Kids.
They're 8.
Yeah, I guess.
The only thing about your answer that I do wonder about is he critically acclaimed in the way that, is he a guy that everybody loves?
I think in the 90s he was.
I'm not sure he ever was. I mean, I understand that he had that, as with the association with Tarantino and everything, people sort of gave his movies a little bit more clout, or they gave him a little bit more of a chance or whatever. But I don't know if he's ever hit that level where people are like, he's not like Guillermo del Toro when he comes out with a movie.
I don't know, man. I had a lot of friends that thought that El Mariachi and Desperado were just hot shit in the 90s. Like it was. And
they
were
probably blinded by the Salma Hayek nude scene in Desperado, and
possibly
He made another one.
He did Once Upon a Time in Mexico,
That's right. I was
Yeah.
gonna
which
say.
is actually ironically my favorite of those three, because that was like right around, the point where Johnny Depp started going off the rails as far as performances go. That was a fun performance.
it has that great line: "Are you a Mexican or a Mexicant?"
He said so weird in that movie because he's got this. He's a undercover, or he's a rogue FBI agent or something like that, and he's got an addiction to wearing like goofy T-shirts.
Yeah,
like I'm was stupid or something like that.
yeah.
But yeah, so he did that, and I've never gotten into it.
And Sin City. That's not a great.
Oh, that's another one he did.
I hated that movie.
But that one, I think, goes in the column of he. See, again, I don't know if he's critically acclaimed, but I would say he gets more credit than his films have earned. And to know that he's directing something does not in any way sway me to want to see it.
I agree. All right, here's a question. What movie should have been longer? This person just rewatched The Last of the Mohicans, and despite being 2 hours long, it felt rushed, especially the love story part. I read that the studio made Michael Mann cut it down from 3 hours, which you would have been happy to see. What do you think is a better, longer movie?
It's funny too. I recently rewatched Last of the Mohicans. I mean, probably like in the last year anyway. And I was expecting it to be 3 hours long when I popped it in. I didn't even realize that it was under 2 when I started watching it. But anyway, I'm gonna go with Dazed and Confused.
Oh,
and the reason is I really love these movies where there's these characters, they're all talking about different things, that's just different topics and everything. Talk about it in a really interesting way and all that. And don't get me wrong, I think Dazed and Confused is actually the perfect length because it's covering the last day of school and the last night of school. But I would love to see another hour of all these people talking some more. And I wished he had made Dazed and Confused kind of like how he did the before Sunrise, Sunset, and all those. And we could have kept coming back to these characters and everything because it would have been interesting to see. And it would have been interesting to see if he could have gotten McConaughey back, like maybe do it maybe, I don't know, 10
He could have
years?
done a Boyhood thing with it where he does one every year.
Is McConaughey still hanging out outside the Emporium and all that?
Probably so.
Is he still doing that?
It's interesting because I thought Everybody Wants Some, which is what is supposed to be like the spiritual sequel to it. I thought that was a little too long.
No, yeah.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. There's certain movies where there's not any like overriding conflicts or anything like that. It's just a lot of people just talking and being buds, and
You just got to keep living, man.
Yeah, and it's just a lot of the way they talk about things are just really fun to listen to them, especially when they're high school kids and and they're sitting there, especially when they're all like getting high and everything, and they're like, "We're the aliens, man." Yeah, and all that. It's just there's certain movies that make you want to continue the entire. Now, Dazed and Confused, they go all the way to the morning. And it's got that feel like, if we had seen them the next morning, it wouldn't have nearly the same sort of mesmerizing effect, I don't think, because it's that one day thing that really, but I still want to see more.
Did you have a graduation party when you graduated high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think anything like that.
It wasn't a big deal. Did you have one?
Have you not heard enough about my upbringing?
I do remember I do remember a bunch of friends and I had a thing where we all drove to my theater, which didn't have matinees during the weekend during the week. And so it was a completely empty theater, and I could pretty much do whatever I wanted to.
Nice.
And so we went there. It was like a half day or something like that, around noon, 1 o'clock or whatever. And we started watching some movies, and think we watched Forget Paris.
Is that where he's a basketball ref? No.
Yeah, well, he starts off that way, and it's the line in the trailer where Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is having his farewell thing, and he's like, he kicks Kareem Abdul-Jabbar out of the game, and he's like, "This is my farewell game." Like, well, let me be the first to say farewell, and all that. And so, yeah, I believe that is that because he gets fired,
right?
And then he has one of those moments where he has to, like, I guess go to Paris or something. I can't remember the whole fucking movie.
Are we running it together with the one with My Giant or whatever?
No.
The tall basketball playing
I never
guy?
see My Giant.
So he's got 2 movies with basketball? Is this like
but that's such a small part of Forget Paris.
Okay.
Like, it's like the beginning of the movie, and then he doesn't do that.
There is a part in that movie, I think, where he calls up his friend in the hotel, and this is obviously pre-internet. He was like, "Do you remember our high school PE teacher?" And he's like, "Oh, Mrs. whatever it is." And he's like, "What for?" And he was like, "I was just, planning on masturbating later. I wanted a name to put the face to."
Oh my god!
I know. So what? Joe Mantegna's in it, and yeah, this is the one. Yeah, he and Deborah Winger and all that. I mean, it's one of those movies. I saw it back then. I don't remember anything.
Graduation day.
Don't remember anything else about it. What was it? It came out in 95. It came out May 19th, 1995.
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
Good call.
I don't know why. I don't know why it was that movie. 95 was sort of a weird year. It seemed like every time I had one of these, like, friends get together type of things, because I had 2 that year. One was the graduation, and then one was when there was a big, huge snowstorm, and I got a whole bunch of people out, and we watched a whole bunch of stuff that whatever was out at the time. So it was Toy Story. It was Grumpier Old Men. It was Cutthroat Island.
Yeah.
It was like, it was, so there was a lot of shitty movies in these like things. Or
I drove in that storm from Nashville back up to Chicago. With 3
Oh,
other
really?
people. Yeah, it was it was actually the single scariest drive I've ever been a part of.
Jeez.
It was a blizzard.
Yeah.
And we didn't leave in time. So basically snow-covered roads, whiteout conditions. We had no choice but to keep going. It was frightening.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Drive with Ryan Gosling.
All right.
Now, I know this movie is divisive enough that some people really dislike it, and its following may be cult. I don't know. It's a movie that's all about vibe and tone, and I dig the shit out of it. And it shocked me when I looked it up preparing for this to find out exactly how long it was, because I've always thought this movie should be longer. I'd keep watching. It's only 1 hour and 35 minutes,
Oh, really?
including credits. And you don't think about that. I mean, if you're just kind of remembering the movie, you probably think, yeah, it was probably about 2 hours. But no, and I could have gone another 25 minutes in that universe with those music choices, with the colors, and there's just a lot to love there. And I felt brought out too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that was my answer.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since it came out, but I just remember watching it and not realizing how brutally violent it was.
Right.
And it just comes out of nowhere. And I was like, damn, I'm not prepared. I was not prepared for this. I ended up liking that movie though. I didn't get to a situation where I'm like, I love this or I hate it, but I just remember like, I like
if
it.
only for your 3 main side characters are played by Bryan Cranston, Albert Brooks, and Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
How can you not enjoy that?
Speaking of hating movies, I ironically think Justice League should have been longer.
And you're not alone there.
There's so much bloat, especially in something like Batman v Superman, where it was just so long and it was so protracted and it was just awful. I think with a movie like this, at the pace in which they were trying to make it, you needed another 25 minutes to make that even serviceable. To fill in a little bit of backstory for Cyborg in particular, especially the secondary characters. Aquaman had literally like one scene in his home village, maybe 2 scenes where Bruce Wayne shows up. And then Cyborg had basically his backstory. You got to watch Batman v Superman. Flash had a little bit, but like color those in a little bit. We know Wonder Woman, we know Superman, we know Batman at this point.
Yeah, and the movie opens with a Batman action sequence and a Wonder Woman action sequence.
Exactly.
And it's not like the time wasn't there.
Yeah.
They just used it on the wrong things.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I don't disagree, and I know the internet agrees with you, especially you're actually agreeing with all those DC hardcore fanboys who want what they believe exists, the so-called Snyder Cut that's near 3 hours long.
Every fucking article that I see on my Twitter timeline is the reason that the Justice League Director's Cut will never come out. Zack Snyder teases that he might put it out. No, it doesn't exist. Yeah. No, it's this. No, it's a Whedon Director's Cut. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, fucking, what is the deal with this?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think your line was perfect. To make it serviceable, it could have stood to be longer. I still don't think it would have made it great.
Yeah, Batman v Superman did not need that extra thing with the directors.
Yeah, take the time out there and throw it forward into Justice League.
Don't you think a lot of the things, though, that we don't like about Justice League would still be there even if you had 45 extra minutes, though?
Absolutely.
I do wonder about that. Like, you know, you and I both saw the extended cut of Batman v Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean...
there was one moment.
Yeah, the Batman scene.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Like, there was that made that, you know, even watchable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I would have noticed it if I didn't have like a list of shit that they put in that it was longer. There was like a Superman thing that had some context to it too.
Yeah,
whatever.
That was the movie that I was watching. I had the theatrical version on my computer, I think, and then I had the extended version on my TV. And I would watch, and then once they diverged, I'd have to pause the other one and like watch the extended scene, and then the extended scene would finally catch up to the other movie, and I'm like, all right, sync them back up.
Oh, what a pain in the ass.
It was terrible. All right, let's do one more. What are your favorite instances of songs as exposition, where the lyrics or name or the nature of the song are directly adding to the story? This listener's contribution would be the times they are a-changin' in Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not the Hallelujah in Watchmen.
No.
The lyrics complemented the photos articles being shown perfectly. I like that. Yeah, I actually like that montage at the beginning of Watchmen.
So my answer, I wanted to come up with something just really fucking cool, but a lot of times I come up with something cool. I'm going to bring these up too, though, by the way, but I come up with something cool. I couldn't figure out if it really had anything to do with the movie at all.
Mm-hmm.
So Lean on Me starts with Welcome to the Jungle.
I was shocked to learn that because I've seen that movie, but I did not remember that.
And it's the entire song too. Like it opens up with that, and just the whole song plays. So you get to see what's going on in this high school right off the bat. And of course, Welcome to the Jungle is all about, you know, going to a city and seeing all these different things that, you know, the drugs, the sex, the money,
the shanananananananese.
Yeah, the shananananananese. So that's one that I think fits the question. The one that I thought might go along with it, and it just doesn't. I was reading the lyrics to it and everything. I was like, I think you just picked it to be cool. Wes Anderson it uses the Who's a Quick One While He's Away during that whole scene where Schwartzman and Murray are like getting back at each other, you know, in
Rushmore.
Yeah, in Rushmore. It starts off with the bees going into Bill Murray's office and everything, and Murray having that priceless look on his face, like that motherfucker, you know. And it's like, and you know, it goes into that song, and the song is about a woman who, like her husband or somebody or her lover or whatever has left and has been gone for a year, and then like she has sex with somebody else while he's away, and then the husband or whatever comes back and forgives her for the sins that she's. So it didn't have anything to do with it, but it goes along with this. When you hear A Quick One While He's Away, it seems so much, you know, like a revenge type song or whatever like that. It's not really a revenge song. And the other one that I thought of I was like, oh, surely this has something to do with it, even though I didn't know what the lyrics were before. But Martin Scorsese plays that Donovan's Atlantis during the scene where they're beating down Billy Batts
in
Goodfellas.
Goodfellas, yeah.
I'm not I'm not saying the movie titles today. I'm playing the movie title game with you guys. No,
I thought Billy Bats was in Casino for a second there. That's why I asked.
it's it's the character that's like, go get your shine box. Anyway, they beat him down in the bar, and Donovan's Atlantis plays during this. And you look at the lyrics to Atlantis, and it's like, well, that's pretty much about fucking Atlantis. And you're thinking, well, maybe because it's like way down under the ocean is what it keeps saying, way down under the ocean. You're like, okay, well, maybe they mean they're going to bury him in the ocean. He's going to be sleeping with the fishes, like good old gangster stuff. But then they just bury him in the ground. So it doesn't really have much to do with anything. Anyway.
Well, same thing with Layla. I mean, it doesn't really have anything to do with the end of it, but it's
perfect.
Just
a cool song. Yeah.
Fucking perfect.
I'm going with Wonder Boys, which opens with a Bob Dylan tune called "Things Have Changed," and this is notable for a few reasons because you're following Michael Douglas driving in a car, and this is a character that basically is old and busted at this point. He had that one-hit novel 10 years prior. He's been teaching ever since, working on his second one, and you'll find out through the movie he's just lost. He's lost his way, he's smoking too much weed, he doesn't know how to care about anything, he's quit making choices, both in his writing and in his life, and it's led to a lot of issues. So the song and its lyrics do a good job of sort of talking about that. I used to care, but things have changed. That's the hook of the song. And this is a man that used to care and things have changed. It's also, if I remember right, it was like the first new music from Bob Dylan in a long time. And so it was significant that
he wrote it for this movie, right?
Yeah, he did. He wrote several songs for the movie. The closing credits have another Dylan song, too. But also, this was an older-aged Dylan, you know, and sort of parallels there between, how he's aged versus how Michael Douglas's character is aged. And anyway, it's always struck me as just a very kind of perfect union where you don't have to be paying attention to the lyrics. Because it's kind of got it's got a little jangly kind of feel, like a lot of Dylan songs, and you might just be looking at the credits or watching what's on screen. But if you want to go that extra layer deeper, that what the song's talking about applies directly to the character they're introducing you to.
I think he won the Oscar for this too,
and he might have.
Either he at least got nominated, but I remember him playing that song at the Oscars. Now, he wasn't at the ceremony; he was like on satellite or something like that. And so when they did the nominations, he's like standing there in this live shot or whatever, So, and I think he ended up winning.
I just watched Walk Hard recently, and that scene where he's like, maybe Bob Dylan stole from me, and then they cut to that song. He's like, "Lighthouse is blah, 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 and the band's like, what the fuck is he saying?" It's so great. All right, so I think it's almost a cliche because it's really on the nose, but at the end of Magnolia, the Wise Up song, the Amy Mann song.
Yeah.
So I watched this again, and I still don't really know. I think it goes perfectly with it because each of the characters are reaching some sort of resolution, whether it's Julianne Moore kind of, realizing what she's done.
They're
and where
all
she's at.
damaged characters.
Yeah. And, there's a few in the car. There's Philip Seymour Hoffman in the room with the Jason Robards and everything. And it's like, it's not going to stop until you wise up. But then it's also like just kind of giving yourself over to the situation. And there's so much to unpack from that movie that I kind of want to just watch the whole thing again and write like a missive about it and send it to Kevin Smith and see what he thinks. Yeah, but that song is so great because they play the actual song in the background and they have the actors singing over it. Man, it's fucking it's intense, man.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it for this week. Keep going to SinCast presented by Cinemasins Facebook page. Keep going to our SoundCloud.
Good comments this week.
Very good comments. Everybody.
Thanks for showing so much love to Jessie. She deserved it. But
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I do pretty much respond to most things on Facebook, and I felt bad because everybody was like, "Congrats on the 100th episode, and congrats on Jessie," and I'm like, How can I creatively say thanks 100 times? And the answer is you don't. But yeah, appreciate all that. But keep going to going to our Cinemasins Twitter. We've got Reddit. We've got a million different ways to come in contact with us. But that'll do it for this week. It's Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, and Barrett Sher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit Cinemasins.com.
I'm not going to pull that up again because it's apparently
Yeah.
a trap.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. By the way, that would piss me off about Rogue One. Is all those little stupid callbacks to the original where it's like, who says it's a trap? Oh, Saw Gerrera does.
Yeah.
And somebody else says, I've got a bad feeling.
Yeah.
About-
and then they cut him off.
They cut him off.
But so Saw Gerrera did not have that crazy high-pitched thing at the beginning of the movie, right? Because when he called down to her, he was like, "Come, child," or whatever, right?
High pitch thing. What do you mean?
He talks like this.
Oh,
he's all
Kind of goes all over the
There
place.
is
in that movie.
that is a weird performance, man.
This is the most we've ever tipped our hand at upcoming videos in a podcast. We might as well just embrace it.
Half of the comments in the ET video are like, "Rogue One's coming next week."
Yeah, everybody
Sweet.
knows it. I don't care. They waited long enough. We're giving it to you.
Yep.
We went through a lot of pain to make it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I would watch an entire movie with Donnie Yen's blind force-wielding
Yes.
staff dude. An entire movie.
Fucking awesome.
I mean, basically, it would be like Ip Man in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And I'd be totally okay with him like Yoda-ing somebody. Oh, God. That's one of my favorite characters. He's one of the few that does get... What's funny is his partner with the machine guns gets as much screen time or more, but gets none of the development.
Yeah.
Like, Donnie Yen's character actually feels like a character. One of the few in the movie that does.
Yeah.
Like, Riz Ahmed's character doesn't feel like a character. Oh, he's the pilot.
He's
All
the
right.
pilot. He says he's the pilot about a million
Right.
times.
K2SO, hilariously, is probably one of the better developed characters. I don't feel much for Jen.
Jen spends a lot of the movie looking pouty.
Yeah, I mean, her character's supposed to pout, but I don't feel much for that. And, well, basically anybody else.
What about Jimmy Smits?
Well, I mean, I really think more about his L.A. Law days
Yeah.
when I see Jimmy Smits. Like, I'm more nostalgic for L.A. Law than I am in his prequels. But yeah, Jen's another character. She's introduced early on, as the little version of her or whatever, who looks exactly like Felicity Jones. I think they got they got a doppelganger child actor to play her.
It's actually her. They started filming.
Oh yeah, that's right.
26
Forgot
years
about
ago.
that. They did the Richard Linklater thing.
Yeah.
But they start her off there, and then before you even know it, she's whisked away, and she's 20 years older.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's already, I don't know, she's a criminal or something. I don't know. Who knows?
They cut that
They
thing
cut
from the
that whole
trailer.
thing. Yeah, that's another issue I have. And I know you have to make it a certain length. It has to be, it can't be 3 hours long or anything.
It's still
like
long though.
that. But that's what it would have been if we had gotten what we wanted out of this. But they could have done something kind of cool here by making a Rogue One Part 1 and then a Rogue One Part 2, even though we don't encourage that type of thing. I think it would have at least been nice to have one part where we start the introduction of these characters, and then the second one is where they do all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that way we know. And then I don't know what story you'd have in that so-called Part 1, but
She's gonna get a spin-off of a spin-off.
mhm.
They'll do like the teenage years,
Mhm.
the Jen Erso Chronicles.
Exactly.
Did they name the Han Solo movie, right? Is it called Solo?
Solo, a Star Wars story, which I
Oh, did
can't
they-
tell you how much I love that. I hope they keep doing that. I hope a Star Wars story is the suffix of every non-canon movie ever, and I'm being completely sarcastic.
No, it'll happen. It's definitely happening.
It's so stupid.
because they did that with Twilight. They wanted to have it where here's the title of it, but we want to make sure that everybody knows it's Twilight.
Right, exactly.
So they did that type of thing with Twilight, and they've been doing that ever
But
since.
Star Wars is at a point where, damn, just name it Solo. You
Yeah.
think people aren't going to know it's coming out?
Yeah.
It's like fucking Logan. Everybody knew what Logan was.
Yeah, they didn't say an X-Men story.
Yeah.
Even watching
X-Men's Origins.
even watching the press for upcoming The Last Jedi, I'm like, why are you even spending money on this? Like, this seems like at this point you've reached critical mass already. Don't spend the millions of whatever it costs to send all those actors to all these talk shows and do all this press. Everybody's going to be there already. Most of them have probably already bought their ticket.
There was a Gizmodo article or something like that said The Last Jedi is going to be the best reviewed Star Wars film ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't click on it, but like it seemed like a factual thing. It wasn't like an opinion piece.
I don't think anybody's seen it yet.
I don't think anybody has either.
Even
right?
press.
Yeah.
But the Phantom Thread apparently is screened for press, and did you see? It's like, oh god, everybody's raving.
I saw one tweet review, and I'm really, really excited because that trailer is just
the trailer's weird,
right? Mm-hmm. It seems fine, but it doesn't seem like
it doesn't tell you enough, which is fine.
Which is fine.
It sells itself on the fact that it's Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Thomas Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to watch it regardless. But yeah, I think they're holding back on what makes that movie good in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they are.
Because that trailer doesn't make you want to go. If it said, directed by Jane Campion, I would be like,
like starring James Franco.
Right. I'd be like, maybe. I might see it. I don't know.
I've got to see a lot of shit. Did you like Lady Bird?
Oh, yeah.
That's so good.
I've liked
Have you seen Lady Bird yet?
Do I look like a guy who goes to the theater very often?
I have liked every single movie that is out right now that the people have told me to go see.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the Big Sick on Blu-ray. I watched that last week. Really enjoyed it. And then I saw the Florida Project at Belcourt. That's an outstanding movie. Outstanding. I haven't. I can't believe the performances that are in that.
Who's in that?
Well, the only name actor is Willem Dafoe, and he pulls out one of his best performances ever.
Nice.
Because it's so not Willem Dafoe-like.
Really?
Even though, there's a certain expectation with Willem Dafoe.
It's not Death Note Willem Dafoe,
yeah,
right?
Where he's just kind of a creepy character over there in the corner. It's not like that. And then he found some girl off of Instagram.
Yeah, it's like amateurs, right?
Yeah, and she's fucking phenomenal.
Huh.
And then they got these kid actors who are amazing in it. And the kids sort of rule the movie for about an hour or so. But then the story sort of changes. But yeah, that's one of those you think about afterwards. And then the 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is a really good one. Frances McDormand, really, really awesome in that. I've seen a lot of great female performances this year. If this is another fucking Meryl Streep fest, I guess she could get nominated for The Post or something like that. But if this is one of those where she's like getting nominated for, some bullshit, like we always see with Meryl Streep.
Ricky and the Flash.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. If I see that bullshit, I'm going to be pissed because there's plenty to go through this time. It's not just like some token Meryl Streep year.
Saoirse Ronan was really great
she's so good. She's so
Lady
good.
Bird.
Why you guys both keep looking at me like I feel enough shame? I'm sorry I didn't see it. You said Lady Bird, and both of you went look over at Jeremy. It was like
you're
scripted.
Because you're not in that club of people who.
Plus, also my nickname is Lady Bird, so I guess maybe it's natural for you guys to just.
That's correct. It's basically Greta Gerwig. Like it's apparently autobiographical.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I've seen 2 movies that were basically autobiographical, and it's amazing how those end up being good movies most of the time. Big Sick was the other one. It's just I don't know. Maybe it's because of the familiarity with the material or something that they just are so at ease making the movie and making all the scenes and everything. So I don't know. Big Sick and Lady Bird have that in common.
Lady Bird has I don't know if it's my favorite, but I think it's like the most realistic performance of losing a virginity that I think I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
She's like, I was on top. Who the fuck loses their virginity when they're on top?
Nice. Did the poker soaks? Do the poker socks help?
Poker soaks.
So, do the poker socks help? Or is it just a cuteness thing?
Have you seen the poker socks?
I have not.
Yeah, they got
nice.
Yeah, I've also got barbecue socks. My mother gives me these socks.
Barbecue socks.
Oh, it's fucking outstanding.
They say things like hot stuff and like smoking and stuff like that. And my son likes them so much that he stole them from me. Let's see, what the fuck, man? Why do you want barbecue socks?
Yeah, who cares?
I just saw a commercial this morning for Chili's, and they're advertising some like enhanced fajita, but they're running that barbecue sauce jingle again.
Mm-hmm.
Only they're like barely doing barbecue, and like he was like fajitas or something and meat in the cheese, barbecue sauce or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but part of it was Chili's is back, baby. That's part of the song. And I was like, when you have to basically tell the world you're back, that's not a very good sign.
By the way, do you want to know what I think is the most arrogant commercial being played right now?
I would love to.
The most arrogant commercial being played right now is the one where there's the little girl and she's on her iPad or whatever. And they show her doing all these different things. And then by the end of it, there's this woman, her neighbor comes out and is like, "What are you doing on your computer?" And she goes, "What's a computer?"
I saw that ad. It's
What?
That's
Because I believe Apple is really trying to redefine the fact that their thing is not a computer and that we're going to forget what computers are. And here's somebody who's of the kind of age that will start that revolution, who will say, I don't work on computer. I don't even know what a computer is. This is an iPad.
Yeah.
You know what, though? They're probably right.
I mean, eventually.
No, look.
Eventually, not now.
Look, maybe eventually, but what I'm saying, first off, it's stupid to think that this girl doesn't know what a computer is.
Yeah.
And she's not saying it in a sarcastic way.
Right.
She's not being like, "What's a computer?"
Dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They make it seem like she actually seriously doesn't know what one is. And I mean, come on. Come on. We're not in that society yet. And I know, but they're trying to make it seem like, I guess they're trying to make it seem like that's what we will be at some point. And I don't know. I don't know if we ever will be at a point. I think everything in this world still has an audience. Even fucking radio has an audience.
Mm-hmm.
All the things that you thought were obsolete still have people who use those things.
Look at the resurgence of vinyl.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I have an 8-track player, or not an 8-track, a reel-to-reel player.
Do you watch Shark Tank, the new ones on Sunday night? This guy had this amazing, I don't remember if he got a deal, but he's a big vinyl head, and of course vinyl's popular, and he has this little box he created, and you can set a record down on any surface, put a little box on it, and it's got a needle in there, and it scoots itself around the record and plays music. It has a speaker built in and can Bluetooth to a nearby speaker.
Yeah, my dad was telling me about this.
Oh, now that's cool. You'd be able to Bluetooth it.
Yeah, and I was just like...
You could just put it on your counter or whatever and just put this thing on.
Blew my mind. I thought, wow, that's really clever. I would never have even thought.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think he got the deal.
I think he got some kind of deal, yeah. He seemed to be like a real enthusiast for vinyl.
Yeah.
Although some of the criticism was, if you really love vinyl, why would you ever play it on this system that doesn't sound quite as great?
That's the Grammy logo, too. The Grammy thing.
Fuck the Grammys.
The gramophone.
The gramophone.
No, the Grammys are good this year.
Oh, that alone as a statement sort of says...
I know. Well, they're all hip-hop, right? Like all the best record nominees are hip-hop.
Are they? I haven't seen
because it's Childish Gambino. So record of the year, it's Redbone, which I think is my favorite song of the year. It's Humble. There's a Jay-Z song. There's I think Bruno Mars has one. I think it's 24 Karat Magic, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's one more that I think is a hip hop song. No, it's just kind of
there's something to be said for a song that you can't avoid, and that's 24 Karat Magic. That's a movie.
Everybody was try-harding on that.
Yeah.
From the performer to everybody who loved it.
It's not a...
Pop, it's showtime.
It may not be a great song, but it was so everywhere that, I don't know.
It's Despacito is the other one. So it's all like non-white. It's not... it's not all
I see.
hip-hop. Fuck you. Fucking shit.
Well, I'm a tad more deaf than I was when I walked in the room.
Sorry.
Appreciate that.
My hearing's actually better.
That was louder than the thunder.